Hi everyone, it's Librarian Faith from the Mandel Public Library of West Palm Beach. And today I'm going to show you how to make mini decorative soaps using a melt and pour soap mix. Let's get started, shall we? We'll need a couple of things to do this craft. Most importantly is a melt and pour soap base. Now this isn't the only way to make soap. You can also make soap by mixing lye and some sort of liquid fat together, like olive oil or cocoa butter. But this is the safest way to make soap. Lye can be very toxic and dangerous if mishandled, whereas this is fine. You just cube it up and put it in the microwave. So that's what we'll be using today. You'll also need some silicone molds for your soap. Silicone molds help as you can just pop them right out at the end. You'll need a mica dyes in whatever kind of colors you like. I prefer mica dye to a liquid-based dye as it doesn't mess with the consistency of the soap as much. You'll also need a scent. I'm using English Garden specifically for soap, and less is more when it comes to this. You'll also need some microwave-safe cups and some spoons and something to cube up your melt and pour soap with. I'm using an X-Acto knife because that's what I have in the studio, but any sort of knife will work, even a butter knife. And perhaps most importantly, you'll need a microwave, as that's what we'll be using to melt our soap with. Our first step in making this soap will be cubing these up into even smaller pieces and putting them into a cup. Cubing them up will help it melt a little bit easier when we put them in the microwave. You don't want to microwave these for too long, otherwise their consistency will start getting messed up. You also want to put a roughly even amount of soap in each cup. Later, we'll be pouring the two together in a silicone mold, and we don't want one color to overpower the other. It doesn't have to be precise, so eyeballing is a-okay. Next is microwaving the soap. You'll want to microwave these for about 30 seconds each, and I recommend stopping the microwave every 15 to 20 seconds to give it a stir. You really don't want to overcook the soap. Now that we have our soap mostly melted, you'll want to stir up any chunks that still remain. Don't stir too vigorously or you'll start getting bubbles in your soap mixture. Then take some of your mica powder. I'm going to be using this blue and green, and put about a teaspoon, not even that, put about half a teaspoon, this much mica, of your chosen color in each of the cups. So blue is in this cup, and green, with a little bit of blue, is in the other cup. About this much. At this point, you'll also want to put some of the scent in. Then again, less is more. I made the mistake while testing this craft of getting some of the scent on my face mask, and I don't recommend it. It's quite potent. You'll then take your two melted soaps and pour them in to your silicone container at the same time. This creates a nice kind of swirl effect. And there we go. If you have some extra silicone molds around, I would highly recommend using them and making a slightly smaller soap mold with any leftover you have. I'm going to go ahead and dump these into the flower one. And just let it drain for a moment. Okie dokie. And then we'll come back in about 30 minutes to see how these turned out. Once your soap is completely cool and hard to the touch, you can then take it out of its silicone mold. I went ahead and took the rose out of the silicone mold just to see how it did, and it turned out quite nice for just being extra soap. I also made an extra one with some leftover copper coloring from this rose. Let's see how these two turned out. Look how lovely. And bright and shiny copper. If you want, you can also take an old paintbrush and use the mica as a way to kind of paint on some color to the bottom of a mold. I'm going to be using this rose mold and just painting every other petal with some copper. Make it a little bit more fun. There we go. Tap off some of the excess. And we have something that looks like this. Now, I'm going to take some soap that I already have cubed up and microwave it for about 30 seconds, like I did with these other ones. That much soap only needed about 25 seconds to get nice and liquidy. Then I'm going to add in a little bit of the scent. Let's see if using a spoon won't make it be any cleaner this time. Just this much, a little tiny bit. And a dab of this kind of neutral red brick color. It doesn't have any sparkles in it, which I think will look really nice with the slightly copper accents. Use a clean spoon to reach in. Get about this much worth of mica, just a little bit. Want to get any clumps in the mica out. Then I'll take this and pour it into the newly painted mold, ever so lightly. There we go. And again, we're going to let this sit for about 20 minutes or so, until it's cool to the touch and completely hardened. Now that this last soap is dry, let's see how it turned out. Not half bad. I hope you have some good clean fun making these soaps. Be sure to tune in next week for a new tutorial. And until then, happy crafting!